Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, Capital Markets Analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to be running down the top 10 list of industry news. With us is Shea Gunther. Shea, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
For the record, state your name, who you're with, and a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so my name is Shea Gunther, and I'm I guess one of the few professional podcasters, I guess, in the legal marijuana space. So I produce a few shows now. Actually, one's called Marijuana Today Daily that actually jumps into the top 10 news stories, every Monday through Friday morning. And then on top of that, we have a weekly show called Marijuana Today. It's been around for about 6 years now. That's our flagship show. And then we produce the Weed Wonks and the Green Rush podcasts. So our focus is producing, useful, entertaining content for people interested in the business of legal marijuana. So it covers politics, covers business, covers activism.
All right, so we're going to be running down the top 10 list for Benzinga, starting with number 10. There's U.S. lawmakers are lobbying the House leaders to include cannabis in the next COVID stimulus bill. So the group that stated their case to Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Republican Minority Leader recently called for the inclusion of language in the upcoming Corona stimulus bill that would provide cannabis businesses with increased access to banking services. I mean, that's great, but increased access, how about we just start with access, period?
Yeah, well, this story really bugs me because not only does it affect companies that directly sell cannabis, but it affects my small little media company because we derive some of our income from those companies. So it's just such a broadly unfair policy and way to approach this, especially given that all of these marijuana businesses are being deemed essential. They're businesses that are being recognized as important for people to have, but the federal government is not helping out anyone. So I'm pretty upset by this one.
Yeah, especially with having to pay taxes in cash. I know the IRS is being pretty strained with every other government agency. So why not just make it easier on everybody? All right, number 9, we're going to kind of just skim over. That's with Champion Brands turning magic mushrooms into medicine. We're going to, unless you got something to add to that, I'm going to move on.
Well, actually, let me just say something about that. I think this is really interesting because it's a, right now marijuana is being legalized, but it's really that whole idea is opening up people to, the broader idea that, there are other drugs that have therapeutic value and that, shouldn't be criminalized. So I think that, I don't want to go into that one too much, but I do think that's an important storyline that's coming out of legal cannabis.
Yeah, Dr. Allison Drayson is local here in Seattle. She's with the Ames Institute, and she's doing a lot of studying on psychedelics, LSD, psilocybin, and a whole bunch of stuff. So I think that there's a lot to that. I'm just not a fan of Champion Brands necessarily, but I do think that there's a lot to PTSD and depression and a whole lot of things. So I've microdosed myself. I think it's better than coffee. But it does dehydrate me. But regardless, I think it's good. I just, I'm not sure that this is necessarily a news story so much as it is maybe a pay to play. It's in the news every single week, maybe because it's the only game in town. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's also just I think there's a thirst overall for just kind of those stories because they are kind of catchy. So.
Yeah. And another podcast that we're going to do, top 10 cannabis stock news stories of the week. They're in there every time too, because they're just going parabolic. They're a penny stock. So it's one of those 1,000% increases. So one of those stories. But moving on to number 8, Molson Coors and Hexco, they have a joint venture for a CBD drink in Colorado market. So that's interesting. So Hexco announced the joint venture Trust CBD USA is now going to produce a non-alcoholic hemp-derived CBD beverage in the Colorado market. So Washington and California is not legal for CBD beverages, but Colorado's legal, and they can obviously export that to a lot of different states. So that is going to be, I already knew that middlemen were going to collapse, and just go away, figure, something else. But this is going to be a game changer just for the entire CBD market.
Well, and Colorado's, a great market to launch into. It's definitely a mature cannabis market with relatively educated consumers. So and CBD is just so hot. I'm not super big on cannabis drinks overall, but I think CBD has a place maybe more so than THC. So.
Hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a huge gateway, if you will. I mean, it started with it allowed psychedelics to get into the mix. So yeah, CBD has been huge for the entire industry. Number 7 is how the impending recession could change the cannabis industry. The 2020 recession represents the first time an established cannabis industry has had to face an economic downturn. So, in recent weeks, some financial commentators have viewed the recent spikes in cannabis sales as a predictor of a bright future for the industry. And I've done a couple of podcasts. One was about 11 months ago on sin stocks and how there's an inverse relationship with, vice stocks. So, whether it's gambling, alcohol, tobacco, and now cannabis, I think after systemic, collapse of everything happens, one of the V-shaped recoveries you're going to have is cannabis, where everything else might just kind of take a while to come back if it comes back at all.
Well, yeah, people like cannabis. Or cannabis is therapeutic, and yeah, that I definitely agree with that assessment. I think that we're lucky that we have an industry. Sales are certainly going to be depressed, but it beats not beats being the restaurant industry, not having any business. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm thankful.
Yeah, number 6 on the list is that former Red Bull Canadian president joins Champion Brand Special Advisory Committee. So that's interesting. I guess they're grabbing some more folks for board of director for that psychedelic industry. So grabbing some more people from Red Bull that had a lot of success marketing and distribution.
Yeah, it's the continuing rush of kind of traditional business money suits into this business because there's lots of money
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm. All right, number 5, allowing marijuana businesses to open bank accounts could be a part of the corona stimulus. So maybe this should have been the earlier one, but this is bigger news. So there's a legislation allowing banks to serve legal cannabis businesses has been stalled in the Senate. So members of Congress are looking to add its provisions to the next coronavirus bill. The argument is that many patients who use legal cannabis are among the most vulnerable to contracting COVID, and forcing them to deal in cash could put employees at risk. I would also add delivery. Like it's not legal in Washington State, so you've still got to go into the stores and deal in cash. And so I think delivery should be fast tracked. But let's start with banking.
Yeah, well, I think this virus is kind of revealing all of the regulations that we didn't really need to have, or the ones that we should have had. Like delivery makes sense in every market. It makes obviously it makes sense that businesses should be able to open bank accounts. So this is a super long running storyline, and it's just it's intertwined with just the general legislative graveyard that is the Senate. And just the fact that lawmakers are still 20 years behind the public when it comes to prohibition and all that. So yeah.
All right, well, moving on to number 4 on this list is that Canopy Growth exits the cannabis cultivation on 3 continents in a major international pullback. So Smith Falls, Ontario, also said it's eliminating 85 full-time positions. So Canopy Growth is ceasing more cannabis cultivation in Africa, Canada, Colombia, and the US in a bid to improve efficiencies in its global operations. I think what they mean by improve efficiency is cut costs, because you can't cut back on your Latin America production. That's insanity to say that it's cheaper to grow in Canada than in Colombia or Venezuela or wherever they were at. This is about just kind of unwinding some previous deals and simplifying things, I think.
Yeah, well, and they need to make some money. They are, I think, was it 189 million dollars? I think Canadian. They lost on last fiscal year. I could be switching that number. So if I'm wrong, email me. But yeah, they're losing money, yeah, in the wake of the pandemic, they're cutting everything. They're also shifting their grow operations largely to outdoor. They announced in that same call, which a lot of Canadian LPs are doing. So
Yeah, it's a smart move. That's going to allow mom and pops to come in. So I think the micro brew equivalent is going to be the indoor that mom and pops are able to do, whereas macro makes sense on that outdoor sun grown level. So it's
yeah.
going to be not as good, product, but that's, how do you scale that large? It only kind of makes sense.
Well, also in processed processed goods, it doesn't matter. If you're just
Mm.
extracting, you could grow a 10,000 acre grow. It doesn't need to be nice buds.
All right. So back to your point about essential business. Number 3 on this top 10 list of cannabis industry news stories of the week is that cannabis has been deemed an essential business. So it's considered essential as food, water, and all other medicines. So during this time of pandemic response, state and city governments around the country have deemed medical marijuana companies as essential businesses. So that means that they can remain open for business. Many have changed the way that they operate. They have to have online and phone delivery or curbside, or in case of Washington, you just kind of wing it, you know. And I couldn't believe. So I went to 20 stores on 420 yesterday, and I tried to do all pre-order and curbside pickup where available, which it wasn't available anywhere. And the online delivery experience was terrible. Some of them didn't have websites, some of them didn't have menus, some of them weren't really updated. It was bad. I only made 2 out of 20 pre-orders. That's how terrible my experience was, but at
Well, I
least
think
it's essential. At least it's open.
everyone's being thrown into this, so it's like
Mhm.
everyone's like, all right, quick, get a delivery system set up, quick,
Mm.
get it set up, like, and while they're all probably being overworked as it is. So yeah, I mean, this is it's just a little bit mind-blowing. I mean, I've been working, on cannabis legalization since the late 90s, and to just go from there to here, where, I mean, marijuana businesses are being deemed by the government as, being so essential that they should open in a global health pandemic. So I mean, as shitty as things are, I mean, I think it's a good, just as a crazy good mark of how far we've come on that. Yeah, and again, I think this is going to reveal a lot, of just dumb ways that, cannabis shouldn't be sold. Like, delivery should be allowed. Obviously, you should be able to use a card to pay for it. All of those things. So that's being revealed.
Yeah, so as we move on to the number 2 of the top 10 list, Ontario online marijuana purchases jumped 600%. So am I being unrealistic? I mean, I'm in Seattle. It's a tech mecca, and yet the online experience was absolutely horrible. So for Washington to have similar results as Ontario with online purchases jumping 600%, they're going to have to improve that experience. So shit hit the fan like 2-3 months ago. And we've had online, or we've been legal for about 3 years, 4 years. So I mean, they've had a long time doing this, and even 3 months is a long time to prioritize your delivery experience. You can use Leafly or these other options, and yet some of them didn't even have that. So I don't know. Am I being a complainosaurus here?
Well, I think it's just the fact that right now, every every single person, who's selling cannabis, who's allowed, is suddenly needed to figure out delivery. So I think it's just a capacity issue. There's only so many people who know how to implement that. I'm sure they're all slammed with work. So I give a little bit of leeway just to the industry, because of, and also people are just reacting to the fact that the world seems to be falling apart. So, like, it's just everything is crazy. And so I guess I'm expecting everything to be disrupted.
Yeah, I guess I would agree to that to a certain extent. I had higher hopes, I guess, pun intended.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us to the number 1 industry news story of the week, which is that Trulieve is hiring hundreds of new workers in multiple states. There's an increase in delivery orders and calls from customers that are driving the need for new hires. So there's some large multi-state operators that are hiring, including Trulieve and Curaleaf. So Trulieve is hiring between 200 to 300 positions. They've already hired about 300 people since mid-March. And so there you go. That's kind of the result of maybe hoarding or just a new consumer purchasing behavior, which is online ordering and delivery options where available.
Well, I imagine it's got to be just more resource or human resource intensive to do like curbside delivery and curbside pickup. And so, like, if you're a dispensary owner, you might just need more people to do the same number of business. Um, but I mean, this is a good thing. I mean, if I was looking for a job, and thankfully I'm not, I'm very grateful for that. But I would rather go work at a dispensary, I guess, than go work at a grocery store. Yeah, just grocery stores are just still scared of grocery stores right now.
Well, in addition to fast tracking bills for delivery where it's not available, I think maybe if I'm looking into my own crystal ball, that maybe more stores are going to look for locations that have drive-through windows. So maybe more of a fast food model where you don't have to get out of your car, just to kind of have a defensive play in events, where the flu season turns crazy.
Well, I can also see this kind of just driving a lot of, defensive design by, dispenser. When you build a dispensary, you're going to build that in, even if maybe your state doesn't allow it, because maybe a pandemic, future pandemic will, or so I think this is going to change a lot of the ways that we design our world.
Yeah. All right. With that, I think we're going to roll this one up. I want to thank my guest, Shea Gunther. Shea, state your name, where you're with, how people can reach you.
So I'm Shea Gunther. You can find my daily podcast at mjtodaydaily.com. And if you want to listen to my weekly show, it's mjtodaypodcast.com. So, and then you can check out my other shows off of links off of those. So just remember those two links.
And those links will be in the show notes as well. All right, Shea, appreciate it. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.